Under every kid's bed you might find some toys, maybe a few socks, or that missing homework from last week. But what 8-year-old Lily discovered beneath hers that Sunday morning made even hardened government experts break into a cold sweat. These weren't your average chicken eggs, they weren't snake eggs. And they definitely weren't anything the local zoo had ever seen. Within hours, her quiet suburban life turned into a scene from a movie. But the real shock came when the lead expert, after 30 years in the field, said something that chilled everyone to the bone. In all my years, we've never seen anything like this before. The morning started like any other in the Thompson household. Sunlight streamed through the windows of their suburban home, casting warm patches on the hardwood floors. Little did they know that in just a few hours, their world would be turned completely upside down. Lily Thompson was a typical 8-year-old girl with an unusual Sunday morning routine. While most kids her age would be glued to cartoons or begging their parents for pancakes, Lily had developed a habit that her parents found both amusing and oddly responsible. She liked to clean under her bed. It had started 6 months ago when her mother had joked about dust bunnies throwing parties under there. Since then, Lily had made it her mission to keep the space spotless. Her father, Oscar, often teased that she was the only kid he knew who voluntarily cleaned anything, but this particular Sunday would prove to be different. Very different. As Lily pushed her bright pink flashlight into the darkness beneath her bed, something caught her eye. At first she thought it was just another lost toy or maybe one of her brother's soccer balls that had rolled under there, but as she leaned in closer, her heart began to race. There, nestled in the far corner where the flashlight beam barely reached, were several large, oddly shaped objects. They seemed to shimmer slightly even in the dim light. Lily had never seen anything quite like them before. They were eggs, but not like any eggs she'd ever seen in her science books or at the zoo. These were different than chicken eggs, smaller than ostrich eggs, and had a strange, almost metallic sheen to them. The surface appeared to ripple, like the way heat waves distort the air above hot pavement. Most disturbing of all, Lily was absolutely certain they hadn't been there yesterday. This is where our story takes its first dark turn, because what happened next would set in motion a chain of events that would change the Thompson family forever. Lily did what any sensible 8-year-old would do, she called for her mom. But something in her voice made Sarah Thompson's maternal instincts kick into high gear. It wasn't the usual "Mom, come look" of an excited child. There was fear in her daughter's voice, a tremor that made Sarah drop the laundry basket she was holding and rush upstairs. When Sarah saw what her daughter was pointing at, she felt a chill run down her spine. As a biology teacher at the local high school, she had a pretty good grasp of local wildlife. These eggs, they weren't from any animal she knew, and they definitely weren't supposed to be under her daughter's bed. Oscar Thompson was in the garage working on his car when he heard his wife calling. Again, something in her voice made him immediately put down his tools. In 15 years of marriage, he'd never heard that tone before. The family stood there, staring at the mysterious eggs, none of them wanting to get too close. The objects seemed to pulse with an inner light, casting weird shadows on the underside of Lily's bed. The longer they looked, the more unsettling the eggs appeared. "Maybe they're snake eggs?" Oscar suggested, trying to sound casual for Lily's sake. But Sarah shook her head. She taught her students about local wildlife every year. These weren't snake eggs. They weren't bird eggs. They weren't anything she'd ever seen before. That's when they noticed something else. The temperature around the eggs seemed different. While the rest of the room was warm from the morning sun, the area under the bed felt strangely cool, as if the eggs were somehow affecting the air around them. Should they call animal control? The police? As they debated what to do, Sarah remembered an old college friend who now worked as a wildlife expert. One quick phone call later, and Dr. James Chen was on his way. But here's where things started getting truly bizarre. Dr. Chen asked them to send photos while he drove over. Standard procedure, they thought, but his reaction to the pictures was anything but standard. He called back immediately, his voice tense, asking a series of odd questions. Had anyone touched the eggs? Had Lily been feeling sick? Had they noticed any strange sounds or lights in the past few days? Then he said something that made their blood run cold. "Don't let anyone leave the house. Don't let anyone in. I'm calling for backup." Within 30 minutes, their quiet suburban street turned into something out of a movie. 3 large black SUVs pulled up, followed by what looked like a hazmat team. Men and women in protective suits began unloading equipment while neighbors peered curiously from behind their curtains. Dr. Chen arrived wearing what looked like a modified hazmat suit. His face was barely visible behind the protective gear, but they could see the concern in his eyes. He took one look at the eggs and immediately started barking orders into a radio. The Thompson family watched in growing horror as their home was suddenly invaded by people in protective gear. Equipment was set up, readings were taken, and hushed conversations took place in corners. Nobody would tell them what was going on. Then came the moment that would haunt Oscar Thompson for years to come. As he was trying to comfort an increasingly frightened Lily, two police officers suddenly grabbed him, forcing him to the ground. Through the chaos, he heard someone shout, "Possible contamination! Separate them immediately!" Oscar found himself being transported by helicopter to what appeared to be a military facility. Through the window, he could see nothing but desert landscape below. His requests for information about his wife and daughter were met with silence. Hours passed in a sterile white room before a team of doctors finally came to see him. What they told him made his world spin. Lily had fallen ill, her temperature was rising rapidly, and her blood work showed anomalies they'd never seen before. The doctors believed it was connected to her exposure to the eggs. They needed his help, specifically, his blood. Something in his genetic makeup might help save his daughter's life, but before they could proceed, they needed him to sign something. A thick stack of papers with words like classified and national security stamped across the top. That's when Oscar finally learned the truth about what his daughter had found under her bed. The eggs weren't from any known species. After extensive testing and comparison with every known egg-laying creature on Earth, the scientists had come to an extraordinary conclusion. The eggs appeared to be of an undiscovered species that carries a dangerous virus. They contained an unknown biological agent, not quite a virus, not quite a bacteria, that had already begun affecting Lily's system. The reason they needed Oscar's blood? His genetic markers showed a natural resistance to the agent, a resistance that could save his daughter's life. 3 months have passed since that Sunday morning. Lily made a full recovery thanks to her father's blood transfusion. The Thompson family now lives in a different house. Their old home is still under quarantine and study. They carry a secret they can never share, but they're together, and that's what matters most. As for the eggs, they remain in a secure facility, still being studied. And sometimes, on quiet nights, Lily still checks under her bed, not out of fear, but curiosity. After all, she's now one of the few people on Earth who can say she's had a close encounter with something truly out of this world.